which speaking of which, let's actually get into your predictions. Let's start off with the 8-9 because I think that is the most tumultuous slash competitive game we're going to see on paper between Tennessee and Ohio State. Who do you have winning that?
Ohio State. And I only say that because, like, look, Tennessee, they limped their way in, and if you look at their quality wins versus losses, it's the SEC. Yeah, they're going to make it seem like, oh well, they beat Alabama. Yeah, so did every other 6-6 team in the conference that year. I mean, there was an argument at one point that Tennessee wasn't even the best team in the state of Tennessee that year,
Yeah.
that season. So I'm just I don't really believe in them, and I think Ohio State has so much. Like you talked about Kirby Smart being a guy that like loves to say the world is against us at all times. Last time Ohio State played in the horseshoe, people were booing. They were trying to fire Ryan Day. They were trying to get all these things going on because they lost to Michigan. They're going to lose 2 straight games in the shoe.
No, no way. There's no. I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think Ryan Day could survive. I think he would just immediately just leave and pack up. He wouldn't even pack up his office. He'd be like, just burn it all.
Yeah,
And I think,
exactly. I'll just toss a match and you feel free. Like have fun with it. Get Lou Holtz to put out the fire for us.
and I'm with you. So we'll both have Ohio State versus Oregon in the quarterfinals. Let's move over to Clemson and Texas. Who do you have winning that game?
Oh, this is tough. I look as decent as Clemson looked in the ACC championship game. I still just don't think they're that team. I hate to say that Texas is probably going to pull this one out. Let's say it's closer than the experts think, but like the thing that disappointed me about Clemson was that they looked like they were going to run over SMU, and that they went up 21-0. It
Right?
looked like nothing was going to stop them, and I thought, okay, well there you go. That should be your Clemson. Finally looks like Clemson again. I don't think they can. I don't think they can do that, especially on the road. I mean, look, they already had enough trouble winning at home against lost South Carolina, lost to Louisville. Texas is going to be the most physical team they probably play all year, and it's the one team that I thought was deserving from the SEC to get in. So I think that's going to be a bad look for the ACC, even though it shouldn't have been.
All right. Moving. I'm actually gonna go with Clemson on this one.
I'm
Um,
happy for. I would not be sad at all if that happened.
I'm not doing this to be an ACC homer, but I just feel like again talking about that momentum. I think Texas coming off a loss, even though they should be winning. I think again experience wins out, and Texas the last time they were in the playoffs they lost to Washington. I think they're going to lose to. I think just Dabo. I don't know what it is. I just am a firm believer that usually experience in situations where you're not sure is the safer bet. So I'm going to go actually Clemson on that one.
You just don't like Texas's locker room videos. That's all it
I
is. You
Yeah,
don't like
that's
them
true
doing
too.
the
I
little
mean that. Yeah,
dances and the
that was.
dropping it like it's hot. Yeah, you don't like any of that. And
Yeah.
and hey, like Dabo says already, there's going to be a point where you have to figure out if God is on Notre Dame's side or on Clemson's side. Because if you ask Dabo Swinney and Cade Klubnik, God is with Clemson now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Which I mean, as a believer, it was funny. Like I was telling Riza last night because we were watching the thing, and Dabo was thanking Jesus. Which I listen before I gave my life to Christ. I would always look at that and be like, man, these guys really love Jesus. Don't understand why, but like now as a believer, I'm like, I get why you're saying it, and I understand your heart. But please, especially the coach from Boise State with it, where he basically gave his altar call, and I was just like, it's a little weird, bro. I'm like, I'm not sure if this is the venue to be evangelizing. I get it. I'm with you. I love Jesus just as much as you do, but I'm like, it's a little too much. It's just for this venue. I'm like, I get it. Like you can. There's 1,000 other venues, but I'm like, this. It's like people are asking you about a
Yeah.
game. They're not asking you to do an altar call. And again, no knock on them. I love the fact they did it. You know,
I just
props to the state.
I, I just want to make sure that Jesus wasn't in that earpiece after the first 15 seconds because they're not allowed after a certain point. If that's an unfair advantage, they got to look into that. So
Yeah, they gotta put the cross on the helmet to let them know they have a direct link to heaven to get that favor. Because favor ain't fair, ladies and gentlemen. Let me tell you something. Favor is not fair. But moving over, speaking of God and Jesus, we've got touchdown Jesus versus the Hoosiers of Indiana. Who do you have in this Indiana rivalry?
this is going into South Bend, and I will tell you, I'm going to take Indiana because
I'm
I think
thinking,
that coach is so angry.
yo, the Fighting Sigs.
The Sigs, he's so angry. And they play a look, as much as they haven't really had their run of the mill in the Big Ten in terms of like they didn't really play the top guys. Uh, they still looked they laid an egg against Ohio State. I don't think they'll do that again. And let's not forget, Notre Dame doesn't exactly play the toughest schedule in the country either. I mean, their one loss is to Northern Illinois, who absolutely out physicaled them. Like what Louisville did to Clemson is what Northern Illinois did to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take Indiana because I think that's such a big deal in that state, and I think they're just so angry that
And
they
think
want to
about it.
show that they deserve to be there.
It's not that it will obviously be home field advantage, but it's not like they've got Boise State coming to Indiana to play in North and South Bend. You know what I mean? So it's
Yep.
like it's not that they're not that far off. So I don't know how much of a home field advantage Notre Dame will have. I'm actually going to go. Sadly, though, I love the Fighting Sigs. I'm going to go with Notre Dame. I just again, I'm going to go. My it's going to be my mantra. Experience will win out. I feel
You're
like Notre
just a
Dame's.
big fan of touchdown Jesus and
I
watching
said
them hit
Lou
that
Holtz.
ball down the field.
I love myself some Lou Holtz. I miss that guy. He's so crazy.
I
No,
just want to make sure it doesn't rain during that game. That's just me up in the box talking to everyone.
the best
Yeah,
part is casuals will have no idea what we're talking about, but the real ones, they know what's up. They
that's
know.
all that matters. Marcus Freeman's gonna finally get them over the hump in the playoff.
Can you believe that too? By the way, Marcus Freeman made it to the playoffs before Brian Kelly. What a time! Brian Kelly.
I'm okay
Brian
with that.
Kelly. I guarantee you, if you go to LSU right now between Underwood going to Michigan and this, there's no way that guy's not trashed his office at this point. Moving over to Happy Valley, we've got SMU versus Penn State. Who do you have? Do you got the Pony Express or you got them Nittany Lions?
Uh, Look, as much as I want to see the ACC get one of these wins, I think it's so tough to go. I don't know what the weather's going to look like. I don't know if they got heaters under that field. Um, I kind of think it's going to be Penn State. I hate to say that
Me
just
too.
because they have a halfway decent defense. And look, we already saw that size differential in terms of how they played against Clemson. Yeah, I'm sadly taking Penn State.
Should we keep it going or should we save this for the first week of the playoffs?
I'm happy to keep going
Let's
because
keep it going.
we could fix it as we go on anyway. Like if we get one of those picks wrong, we could revisit it and say, well, do we think that this matchup looks better or worse after the
Yeah, because
first week?
I haven't looked at any of the stats. I haven't looked at things on papers. I don't know what the matchups look like. So I'm literally just going by my eye test and what
Yeah,
I think will go. So we've got Ohio State versus Oregon. You've got Texas versus Arizona State. I have Clemson versus Arizona State. You have Indiana versus Georgia. I have Notre Dame versus Georgia. And then we both have Penn State versus Boise State. Let's start off with the Ohio State Oregon rematch. Who do you have in
Oregon.
that?
It's
Oregon?
Oregon. We talked about this all
Yeah.
throughout the season so far. I know it's like you're playing people multiple times, but now that the way I had this going in our first, long prediction was that Ohio State would get the better of them, but that would have been after a third meeting.
Yeah.
Now that it's twice, I think it's still Oregon.
Yeah, I'm going Oregon as well. All right, so you have Texas versus Arizona State. Who do you have winning the Texas versus Arizona State game?
um, I'm rolling with Scatterboo. I'm
Scat.
going to take Arizona
Ooh.
State in the upset. I'm going to take Arizona State in an upset only because there's something about that team, man. There's something about them that they just line up to play and they don't care who's on the other side.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I have Clemson playing Arizona State in the quarterfinals, and I'm again. This is my mantra for right now, just because
Experience.
experience wins out, and I think Scottaboo's great, and I think he's good, but just seeing the way that Clemson played Bradshaw. Is that his name?
Brashard
The
Smith, the running back.
Brashard Smith, the running back for SMU, who's had a stellar year. Um, I think they can shut down Scottaboo, even though he's my boy.
Scatterboo is the size of three Brashard Smiths.
Yeah, but still, it's not to me. It's not about size is a big thing. Don't get me
I
wrong.
know.
Size is absolutely a big thing, but I think there are also intangibles of breaking tackles, being in open space, cuts, and speed. And so when you factor those things in, when you look at their attributes, I feel like they're pretty even because at the end of the day, you can you can send what's his name? Oh, what's his name? Smith, the running back for SMU.
Richard Smith, yeah.
Brashard Smith. You can send him out as a wide receiver. You can send him out in the flat, and he's going to catch it like a wide receiver. Like it's not like you're like, okay, I hope you have the hands to catch this, like some running backs. Like he's going to catch it. So, as in terms of a weapon, I feel like he's more well rounded. Whereas Scattaboo is like a hammer. He's like a war hammer, and
Yeah.
you have like Brashard Smith, who's more like a katana. Like he'll just cut through and he'll make it. He's not super powerful, but he's very precise and he'll cut through. So,
The matchup
I'm
that scares me there really is gonna be Wesco Jr., the wide receiver for Clemson, and Jake
mhm,
Brittingstool, their tight end, because in terms of pass coverage, like, even though Arizona State got the better of Iowa State, I don't think they can do that against Clemson in that same regard, so that might be a
yeah.
little difficult for them there.
And again, utter the phrase again. Experience wins out. I feel like Dabo has been here before. He knows what to do. He's won a national championship. He's won in a playoff,
They commit 0
quarterfinal.
penalties.
And again, yes, it was ACC officiating, which is a Timmy Jimmy team as it is, but it still says a lot that hey, you're able to get through without a flag hitting without any laundry hitting the floor. You're pretty good. So now you have Indiana versus Georgia. Who's winning that?
Georgia.
Georgia.
I
Yeah.
Georgia.
I'm gonna say too, like I have Notre Dame going and beating Indiana. I think Georgia's I mean, we've seen this before though. This is a rematch from what was that, the 2016 CFP? I think
And
that
you
was.
know what happened in that game over there? It was not a good look.
No, that was a bludgeoning itself. So yeah, I think Georgia, even with I mean, we'll have to figure out. I haven't heard anything today. Have you heard anything about Carson Beck's injury? What happened? No, so I haven't heard
Haven't really
either.
paid attention much.
Yeah, so if I think he'll be back. So with Carson Beck, I still pick Georgia over Notre Dame or Indiana. So we both have Penn State playing the Broncos. Who do you have there?
Penn State. This was actually, if you go back to our early show, I
Hmm.
had Penn State going to Boise to play the Broncos in the first round. Back when we were still looking at those results with Miami still in playoff contention. I had Penn State winning then. I still have them kind of winning now because, again, as much as look, they took a similar note out of Boise State's offense to make Oregon look mortal. I just don't believe in that group of five. Like, as much as Boise State has had some really fun stories in the past, I just don't believe that part of the country, that team, it looks like a high school team. Ashton Genty's a great talent.
Yeah,
I
they're
just
just
don't
not
know
big
how
enough.
that line.
And I would say
Yeah,
this too. I thought Penn State played Oregon really well, and Oregon beat Boise State. So to me, it's like again, I know the transitive property hasn't been 100% accurate this season because everyone's beaten everyone, but I still think you can use a litmus test in this and say they're comparable, maybe not exactly, but close enough. And it'd be the same thing if Ohio State played the Broncos. I would still pick Ohio State over the Broncos. Speaking of
okay.
Ohio State, we will they're out of it. So we have Oregon playing for you. You have Texas. I have Clemson. Who do you have in a Texas versus Oregon?
Oregon.
Oregon. So you have Oregon going to the finals
Right.
on
Yep.
their side. Okay. Uh I will say the same. I will pick Oregon over Clemson. I think Oregon's just gonna. I think they're a team that's on fire. They're clicking, and you can't stop that until someone proves me wrong. Proves us wrong. I think that it is. Next, we have Georgia versus Penn State in the semis. Who do you have there?
This one's really interesting because after what Penn State did to Oregon, I think that matchup right now favors Penn State because they could do the same thing to Georgia. Like, they
That's
have
true.
a pretty decent team. I think we'll know, like, what does that quarterback situation look like at that point.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think we can have a Big Ten championship game 2.0. So I'm going to say it's Georgia, but I think Penn State gives them a better. Penn State's one of those teams that I think they look not great and not impressive all season, but they have such an easier run through the playoffs that they
Yeah.
just look better right now.
Right.
So I'm giving it to Georgia.
Yeah. Well, you already know where I'm going with this. It's the phrase of the night.
Experience wins out, and James
Experience.
Franklin is coaching Penn State.
That was my second. I was gonna go there, and you stole it from me. That was my next line. I was like,
Sorry.
and James Franklin's going to
Sorry.
James Franklin. At the end of the day, when it comes to these big games, James Franklin's gonna do what James Franklin does best and choke. And so yeah, I have Georgia and Oregon going. I think we both have Georgia and Oregon going. Who do you have winning the national championship?
Okay, so let me preface this right now because there are many things I dislike. The SEC being one of them, hate it with an absolute passion. I think my pick doesn't necessarily say that one conference is superior to another, the talent is more superior to another. I just cannot stand the fact that Oregon has this beautiful trophy case in Eugene that has zero national titles. And when they get there, they usually don't follow through anyway. I mean, they lost to Cam Newton in Auburn that one time. And it
Yeah,
was one of those where I'm like, is this team really going to ever win the big one?
right.
They have to stumble at some point this season because I don't think in this day of college football you can just run the table. I hate to say that Georgia's going to win, but just from the absolute bias that exists in college football right now, even though this is the ideal Big Ten versus SEC matchup that everyone wants, the SEC always finds a way to finagle and weasel their way into a win, and I don't think it's any different with Georgia, regardless of who their quarterback is. I think they'll somehow find a way to get ETN like 300 rushing yards against Oregon and say, "Is that the SEC defense really doing its job?" When it's just a bunch of holds down the way. Sarkeesian will be watching the game, and Sark will be saying, "That's holding two, and that's holding two," and he'll be calling Dan Lanning saying, "Hey, mention to the sideline reporters that they're holding." So I'm taking Georgia, sadly.
You know what I'm gonna say? Where am I gonna go with?
Experience wins out.
Not so fast, my friend. Not so fast. I actually have Oregon winning. I am a firm believer that when you're clicking, and it's when you have weapons, you have weapons. And I feel like when you look at the two teams, if you still had McConkey or who was the other Bowers on Georgia,
Yeah,
I would
Brock
say
Bowers.
Brock Bowers. I'd be like, yeah, absolutely, Georgia clean. They've got this. But because Georgia is so Jekyll and Hyde with their offense, sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's not, and we've seen what happens like in the Ole Miss game, where they can literally poop the bed. I just haven't seen a reason to pick against Oregon. Has Oregon shown up weak at times? Yes, but I think the when you look at the bracket, I feel like Georgia's going to have the harder game because they're going to have to play Notre Dame, then they're going to have to play Penn State, which I feel like is a lot harder than you having to play, in my opinion, what's going to be a weaker either Clemson or Texas, and then an Ohio State that's struggling with their O line. So and you've already played them, you've already beaten them. So to me, I feel like the easier road is Oregon, and they've got all the confidence in the world. They'll probably go into that game with the Heisman quarterback and Dylan Gabriel, and he's putting up monster yards. There's just, to me, this the narrative, and let's just use tinfoil hat theory. There is a narrative because you and I were talking about before this went on. We were talking about how it's so weird that the ACC was, promoting the game the Tuesday before the Syracuse game with UM as SMU versus Clemson. How do they know Clemson was going to make it in there? Not to say that they erased a 21-point deficit, like you said earlier, but
Pop Tart Bowl committee members walking on the sidelines of the Miami, game against was that Wake Forest last game of the
it's
year?
a
Yeah,
little too sus. It's a little
staring
too
at that
sus.
little Pop Tart pouch on the blazer. I went, "We're not playing in that game. I don't know what you're doing here." And Wake Forest, lo and behold, we're playing in that game. I
Yeah.
will get toaster strudel to watch the game because I just don't care for Pop Tarts right now.
Yeah, I probably won't even watch it. I love UM, and I'm just kidding. I'm going to watch it because we have this show. But
I'm
yeah,
gonna open day myself and watch it.
I have Oregon winning the national championship. We will revisit these picks maybe next week or probably the week after in 2 weeks when we have our preview for the week one games for the playoffs. Thank you guys for making it to the end of this video. Thank you, Rudy, as always, for joining us last minute to do this special selection Sunday. We will see everyone next time we see you. As always, be good. Win the weekend. Well, now win the week. And as always, go Canes.
Go Canes and Army Navy picks next show.
Oh, we can do that. That's true. Yeah,
Next
that's
show,
true.
yeah.
Let's go.
You can
Beat
tell.
Army, beat Navy. Let's go. We'll see you guys next time.